All right, you guys know this one, so I'm gonna not be as loud. I'm gonna let you guys carry it, or I might not have any voice to finish the session today. So 84, Spirit of the Living God. Spirit of the living God, fall fresh on me. Spirit of the living God, fall fresh on me. Melt me, mold me, fill me, use me. Spirit of the living God, fall fresh on me. Once more. Spirit of the living God, fall fresh on me. Spirit of the living God, fall fresh on me. Melt me, mold me, fill me, use me. Spirit of the living God, fall fresh on me. Number 80, is that what you said? Number 80?
Somebody else had to get before me.
Well, you would want to heard next. 80. All right. And they can have their numbers ready for next week, right? What I say. Anybody have a favorite? Number 80. Isn't the love of Jesus something wonderful? Everybody about there? Here we go. There will never be a sweeter story of the Savior's love divine, love that brought him from the realms of glory, just to save a sinful soul like mine. Isn't the love of Jesus something wonderful, wonderful, wonderful? Oh, isn't the love of Jesus something wonderful, wonderful it is to me. Boundless as the universe around me, reaching to the farthest soul away, saving, keeping bondage was that bound me. That is why my heart can truly say, isn't the love of Jesus something wonderful, wonderful? It is wonderful. Oh, isn't the love of Jesus something wonderful, wonderful it is to me? Love beyond our human comprehending, love of God in Christ, how can it be? This will be like the never ending, great redeeming love of Calvary. Isn't the love of Jesus something wonderful, wonderful, wonderful? Oh, isn't the love of Jesus something wonderful, wonderful it is to me? All right, thank you for sharing with me this morning. Let's do some brief memory review this morning. Keep it a little brief. Somebody different, who can quote for me Romans chapter 3, verse 10? Volunteer someone who hasn't done it before. I can even give you a starting word if you want. Anybody? It starts as.
As it is written. No.
None are righteous, no, not one.
Okay, as it is written, there is none righteous, no, not one. Let's do that together. Romans 3:10. Romans 3:10. As it is written, there is none righteous, no, not one. Romans 3:20. Oh, Romans 3:10. Yes. How about Romans 3:23?
Four.
All right. Miss Mary's going to say it for us, nice and loud. Go ahead. You said it, but we weren't
Never
all.
forgot what it
We weren't all hearing it. Nice and loud.
You said, for all have sinned and come short of the glory of God.
Very good. Let's do it together. Romans 3:23. For all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. Romans 3:23. And then we've got Romans chapter 5, verse 8. Anybody can say that one. Starts out with but. But God. Oh, Dave's going to say it for us. Nice and loud, Dave.
It's kind of hard with my voice. But God commended His love toward us that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us.
Okay, very good. Let's say it together. Romans 5:8. But God commended His love toward us in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Romans 5:8. All right. If my voice was better, we'd introduce another one this morning, but we'll save that for next week. So I did want to just start out with a couple of thoughts before we got into the lesson. Plus, I'm kind of hoping a few more people show up. Because even though we got things on paper, I thought the discussion seemed to go pretty good the more people we had. But I don't know, this might be all we're going to have this morning. But today being Father's Day, I just wanted to talk just a couple of thoughts about that here real quick. Before I start, anyone have any comments or thoughts that they have on today being Father's Day? However you want to respond to that. Anybody? Maybe memories or, yes, Evan.
I would just say that fathers, while being a father, being a dad, is not really a biological thing, it's a positional thing.
Oh, I thought you were going to say more. I'm sorry. Gotcha.
I could have,
Sweet and concise for you. That's unusual. One sentence. Can you believe it?
Mark it on the calendar.
What's that?
Mark it on the calendar.
Mark it on the calendar. Yes, Dave.
I find it funny, one of a fatherly figure in my life is the song was This Is My Father's Boy. And I just, it's kind of funny.
Good. Anyone else have any thoughts?
We should remember to honor our dad no matter how they treat us, how they treat us. My dad is saved, and I praise the Lord to be 92. A lot of miles in his life, but a great dad.
Yep.
And I live up there for it.
She makes a very good point. That's part of what some of the thoughts that I had. So I guess I'll springboard off of that. Don't worry, I'll let you have more chance if you've got something brewing there. But she said, I think you all heard her, she said about, a day, we should honor our fathers even when our fathers aren't as honorable as they should be. Even if we don't think they're a good dad. The command in the Ten Commandments to honor your father and mother is not one that is qualified on how good of a father or mother they are. It's a command, like many commands in God's Word, that we're to follow regardless of the circumstances. And when we get to heaven one day, and God lays out our life before us at the judgment seat, and says, here's the good things you did, and here's the bad things you did, we're not going to be able to say, oh, but you got to let me off on that one, Lord, because you didn't know what kind of father I had. You didn't know what kind of mother I had. I mean, if you had to live with them, you would realize why I was not able to honor them. God's going to say no excuses. He's going to say it's something that I require of you. In fact, if you think about it, if you stop and think about it, it's precisely when you have a father or a mother who isn't being what they should be that you need to honor them the most. And God will use that. The worst thing you can do is have an attitude of, well, he or she doesn't deserve it. And it's that way in many relationships, that, God has commanded us to love. I mean, if we only love people who are lovely, think about that for a minute. Okay? And God is our ultimate example of that. I mean, think about how if God only loved those of us who were deserving of his love, how many of us would he love? Yeah, we'd be in a bad way. So he has given us the ultimate example of loving in spite of what we may feel is a person's right to be loved and respected and honored. And he set us up that way, which takes me to a thought that I had on the way here, on the way to church. I'll look over my Sunday school lesson. Like I told you before, I prepare ahead of time. I sit down and do preparation, but I always refresh in the hour immediately before coming here. And sometimes I'm doing that, and then my mind will go off on other things. And today it was because of Father's Day that my mind went a different direction. And that brings me to one of the sad things about Father's Day. I was watching a news report, I think it was yesterday or the day before. And it wasn't important, the numbers. I didn't remember the numbers, but the report was saying about, and it showed this year as opposed to a year in the past. Maybe it was last year or 10 years ago. I don't know what it was. But they showed how many billions of dollars Americans were spending on their mothers for Mother's Day. And then they showed how many billions of dollars they're spending on their fathers for Father's Day. And let's suffice it to say that we spend a whole lot less on our fathers than we do on our mothers. Okay? And the commentator, what's that?
They're harder to buy for.
Oh, that's true too. I will give you that. They're harder to buy for. And I will give to you, as the commentator did, there is a special bond with our mothers. They gave us birth, they nurture us and all that. But a lot of that is societal. Unfortunately, it's societal, and we as Christians have to make sure that we don't fall into that trap. I want to ask you guys this morning, I'm going to broaden your vocabulary a little bit, okay? How many know if you are an egalitarian or a complementarian? How many knows what that means? Anybody? They're theological terms, or can be in some cases societal terms. Okay, hopefully you are not an egalitarian, spelled E-G-A-L-I-T-A-R-I-A-N, egalitarian. Hopefully you're not an egalitarian. That's what society wants you to be. Hopefully you are a complementarian. Things that complement each other, get it? Complementarian, okay? If you are, in most churches, liberal churches, they teach egalitarian thought and theology. And what egalitarians say is that we are all equal. And including in the church, and those are the churches that ordain women preachers, because we're equal. And in the home, the wife should have just as much say as the husband. The problem is that position is not a scriptural one. The scriptural principle, whether we like it or not, and traditionally, most churches in the past have been churches that are what we call complementarian. They believe that men and women have equality, okay? We have equality before the throne of God. We are just as valuable to God, men, women, etc. And we have just as much access to him. But God has given us different yet complementary roles in his design for the church and for the home and for society. Now that is something that if you preach, and a lot of churches say it out loud, but if you believe and preach that today, people are gonna frown or worse at you, because that is not what society says. I don't know how much time you guys ever lurk around on the comment section of articles, like I do sometimes. I try not to do it too much because it gets under my skin. I get worked up, and I'm like, this is not worth my time. It's really not. But on the same token, I like to look at comments on articles to see what the other side is thinking, okay? It helps you to better respond when you're talking to someone. Now, what I always have to remember, and hopefully you remember as well, is when you look at the comments section in an article, this is just like, and I know you guys aren't doing this regularly, but for those of us who are evaluating the reliability of a source, when someone says, well, science says this, or a study says this, or whatever, anybody can say anything. What you have to do before you accept or reject someone's premise is you have to know, you have to be skilled in evaluating sources. Okay? Is that study a reliable study? Was it performed properly? Did the people have an agenda, etc.? Before you can say, yeah, I accept that. That's true. And I'm going to posit that truth the same as anyone else does. Or, no, I'm not going to believe that because it was flawed. People had a wrong idea. They had an agenda that they were pushing, and it's woven into that and hidden. And that if you're not in tune and you're not paying attention, you'll be duped by that. Anyhow, when I look at these comment sections, I do realize that it is not a scientific representation of all people. Okay, and very often these sections, depending on what site you're on, are very slanted. Okay, there are certain sites, websites, if you will, news organizations that definitely slant very hard to the left, very liberal and progressive. Well, when you look at the comments section, the majority of the comments are probably going to be of that mindset. You'll have a few of us that are brave to wander in there and try and push back, and of course get mobbed and attacked the second you do. But you have to realize that just because there's the majority of the liberal opinion doesn't mean that that's what the majority of people in general believe, because you're in liberal territory to begin with. The same thing on a conservative website. Okay, most of the comments there are going to affirm what you believe as a conservative with a few liberal thoughts thrown in. So I want to express that right off the bat. But a common thread that you'll hear with liberal sites, and even, unfortunately, some on conservative sites, is you'll hear about the word patriarchy, and they'll say how patriarchy is so evil. Okay, well, I'm going to posit to you that they twist that word, but patriarchy in its true sense is God's design. We talk about the patriarchs, or the fathers. We talk about Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, the patriarchs in Genesis. They were the fathers who were the leaders. And it was God's design. Don't give me daggers. I didn't make it that way. God chose it that way. But he chose for the males to be the leadership. Now, I'll be the first one to say that when you find a man who is a stellar leader, the vast majority of the time, there is a loving, supporting woman behind him that makes that all possible, that lifts him up. It's important. And it's important for us to recognize that as well. You know, I have seen this come up on Facebook quite a lot lately. And I scratch my head because I'm thinking, you know, almost the stuff you find on there you don't normally think as being wholesome and good, and, you know, it's skewed and slanted. But I've seen it a lot, and it's so true. It's the truth, all right? I'm going to be a little blunt with you this morning. We're all mostly adults this morning, and I don't think I'll hurt these ears here too much by saying this, which I guess I should dismiss you guys, but maybe this is probably good for them to hear. Okay? Women in this room, since we're talking about Father's Day, okay? Men want good food. Men want sex from you if you're married. But do you know what men want more than any of that? Men want you to tell them, and mean it, that you respect them and you're grateful for the things that they have done for you and your family. And I see the men shaking their head. More than anything else, that's what a man needs and wants. And if men get that, it encourages them. It makes them roar. They roar. They want to go forward and defend and protect the family with more vigor. But you know, when all they hear is negativity, and when you don't do this right, you don't do that right, you're such a loser, and well, I wish you'd do this. It cuts them off. And, I sometimes hear Christians, okay? It's true. Sometimes hear Christians talk about their husbands like, here he is again. Here he goes again. What a nuisance he is. That's not biblical. That's not how it should be. And I understand there's jokes every once in a while, but when it's regular conversation, we need to evaluate our heart and how we're looking at our husband. Now, again, same goes with wives. Men have a huge command to love their wives. And just like I said, that there needs to be respect, and we're not very respectable. Same thing with the wives. Men, we need to love our wives even when they're not so lovely. It goes both ways. So I don't want anyone to, in defense, he's just beating up on the women this morning. I'm only talking about men because it's Father's Day. But at any rate, in society, you'll hear them speak negatively of patriarchy, which again, there are extremes, but the baseline is that in patriarchy, men are in charge of the home, men are in charge of the church and society, and that isn't something that we necessarily asked women. We didn't ask for that. That's the way God designed it. But in his design of that, you got to admit, I've never read it, but I've heard of it. I'm sure several of you have. There's a book out there that some person wrote that said, how is it? Men are from Mars and women are from Venus. You know what I'm saying? Okay? And again, I haven't personally read the book, but I understand the concept behind it. They're saying that men and women are from two different worlds. Because men and women are so different. Okay? God designed it that way. Alright? Women, you may not like this. Okay? But it started way back in the Garden of Eden. God made it apparent. Okay? What does it say about the fall that caused this whole mess that we're in? It says that Eve was deceived. Okay? Adam wasn't deceived. Okay? If you study your Bible, Adam wasn't deceived about what the serpent was up to. Now, the Bible isn't totally clear, and God will tell us one day. There are biblical scholars that will say different things that you can't 100% prove, but they say, first, the serpent went to Eve because he knew that she was, in that area, the weaker sex, and that he could get to her. And he deceived her into disobeying God. But then when Adam came along, Adam willingly took of the fruit. He knew what he was doing. Okay? Doesn't make it any better. I mean, he was just as much in sin as her. But he knew what he was doing. Again, you'll get commentators that'll say things like, well, Adam likely took of the fruit, knowing that he was sinning, so that his wife that he loved so much would not have to spend her time without him when she got kicked out of the garden, etc. So he did it because he loved her. That we can't prove that from Scripture, but what the Bible does clearly teach is that the woman was tricked or deceived, and that man knew what he was doing, and that he chose to sin. And I just say that because in society, again, men seem to be put down, and women are like, well, we can do anything a man can do. Okay, well, we can argue that all day long, whether you can do what a man can do or not. But again, in God's design, God has designed the men to have an alertness to danger, and both emotionally and physically, to protect the wife and to protect the family. And when we try to take that away from them is when all the problems in the family begin. So, just encourage you to think about that as you relate to the men in your life. As you think about your fathers. And again, maybe, I should say maybe, I know there are some in this room like me who your father's no longer living. Okay? No matter what kind of father you had, thank God for the father that you did have. I've told my children, I don't know that they listen to me, but I've told my children, and I believe it with all my heart, the Bible teaches it. I mean, whether it is a father, whether it's a mother, whether it's your pastor, whether it is your government, the authorities that are over you, God knowingly placed you under the authority of those individuals. Folks, there's something that I don't like to admit this morning, but I have to admit. God has put me under Joe Biden as my president. Yeah, like you, I want to hide from that. You know,
I'm sorry.
now, it's hard to accept, but it says that God is the one who raises up and lowers down the kings. And it's the same way with every other relationship, every other authority in our life, including our mother and our father. So some of us may wind up with less than the ideal, but God has done that for a reason. And, you know, that shapes who we are. And it gives us an opportunity to, as I said before, exemplify grace and honor, even when the honor and love may not be due. With that, anyone have any thoughts? Are you an egalitarian or are you a complementarian? Hopefully you're a complementarian. Again, if you've never heard those terms, you might not hear them ever again, but if you get into any theological reading, you'll definitely hear it. And it's one of the things that sets a lot of churches apart. What we call good solid churches are complementary. And they believe that we're all equal before God, but yet God has given us individual capabilities and responsibilities, and when we try to mix those is when we get into trouble. Whether it's appointing a lone pastor, whether it's husband and wives trying to have equal rule in the home, and hopefully the husband is listening to his wife, and if he's loving her the way Scripture has commanded, will not find it easy to say, no, this is the way it's going to be, but yet that is his right under God to do that. And I've always said that for children or for wives who find themselves in a situation like that, you have an advocate. And that advocate is God in heaven. And you need to go to God. I don't want to be sacrilegious here, but God, all right, you put this guy over me, you put this person over me, and you see what's going on. I really need you to step in here. It's trusting in God that He will lead our leader in the way that we should go. Anybody have any thoughts or comments?
I'm going to say it's probably not even going this way, but our country has gotten so far away from this book here that I don't think we'll ever find our way back. Because our government has nothing. You people there do, but our government has nothing to say about giving. And the last one thing I want to say is, what you were saying, it all boils down to respect. You have to respect each other. Yeah, the love is there. After you're married forever, it seems like it doesn't fade away, but it's not alive like it should be. And it's just that the respect for each other, it's just not there. And we don't teach that anymore.
As far as us ever getting back to that, first off, with God, nothing is impossible.
True.
But I agree with you. As far as society, it's unlikely that we will ever get back to that. I think things are only going to get worse and worse. However, as I mentioned in my comments, we as God's people, the church, have no excuse. And I feel like as the modern church, we don't realize how far we have gotten away from biblical thinking. There's a message I heard many years ago, and the title of the message is How to Think Like a Christian. That message wasn't preached to unbelievers. It was preached to believers, because we, in our thinking, have gotten so far from the teaching of God's Word and rationalized so many things away that we really have to train ourselves to think like a Christian, to think like God thinks. And so we have that hope that the church can get back to what they ought to get back to. But I agree, as a nation, it's probably pretty unlikely. As far as that respect thing, there again, and the kids are gone now, I can speak a little more frankly again. In the beginning, you're right, in the beginning of marriage, there's a lot of physical attraction. Yeah, and that's the spark that really, just can't keep their hands off each other, the honeymoon and all that and everything. Yeah? And for some people that lasts quite a while, but you're right, as you get older, that becomes less and less and less, and there has to be something there that endures and keeps things going. And we have to realize that love isn't just physical attraction. There's more to it than that. And the world's emphasis of love is all on the physical attraction. And so when the guy gets the big pudgy belly, and the woman gets the body parts that are saggy and stuff like that, we should still love them. It shouldn't change the fact of who they are. And it comes down to true love and respect. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with that. Anyone else have any comments? I know we giggle because way too often we don't talk frankly about these sort of things, but we should. We really should. Anybody else? No? Yes, ma'am.
I one time, I was in church and we were actually at the service. The pastor spoke up and said, the main problem with men and women today is they really, truly don't hear one another. It's a lack of communication. And I have to say, I found that to be true. Very true. You need to be able to hear one another. And you need to be able to hear one another and have the communication that is needed, that God wants you to have to pull you back together.
Yeah. So, to his comment though, we have to hear, we have to hear, and we have to value what the other person is saying, and be willing to address it, and not just poo-poo or whatever, So, but yes.
It's a two-way street.
Yep.
You hear that, it's a two-way street.
Anybody else have comments?
I just had to say it.
Good comments so far. Anyone else? Well, again, I just had some thoughts. I didn't know it was going to go that long. Thoughts on Father's Day. And like I said, I know some of us no longer have our earthly fathers here. But if nothing else, bask in the amazing thought that you have a Heavenly Father and that we are so undeserving of His love. But yet, even though He's the creator of the universe, He stooped down so low as to adopt us and make Him our child. Okay? Adoption is such an amazing thing. In my family, we've joked about it. Sometimes if Gigi's being difficult, and have a little thing going there, and I look at her and I'll say, what's so amazing is I said, these guys, I'm pointing all the rest of them, I said, I had no choice in them. I said, but you, I picked you. And God picked us.
Does that make her your favorite?
What's that?
Does that make her your favorite?
Well, the boys would like to tell you that. I will tell you it's not true, because at some point, each and every one of them
You love them.
points to someone else and says, that's Dad's favorite. So, what's that? Anyhow. All right, well, we don't have a lot of time, but in our workbooks on page 134, I think we almost had finished this lesson, day 2. Correct me if I'm wrong, but when we went over, at least I think I remember reading these responses out loud. I think we finished up with letter C. What are the things you get angry about most regularly?
Yes.
Does everybody agree with that?
Yes.
Did anybody have anything they want to add to that? I don't remember if I got through every single paper, but since I don't remember which ones I did and which ones I didn't, I'll just say, does anyone else have any additional thoughts on that one? All right, if not, let's finish up this lesson by looking at number 3 today. I think we have just enough time to do that, and we'll give us a fresh start on day 3 on page 136 next time. I want to start before we talk about number 3 and just reminding you a statement out of the book, and hopefully you've mulled it over in your head and you've thought about it, because it's so true. We've seen it modeled in let's say fresh relationships, okay? So a new relationship, a boyfriend and a girlfriend, and maybe they're at the point where they call each other fiance, or a honeymoon period, or whatever. So not what we were talking about, where things wane over time, and there's still a love, but it's not as as fresh and robust. But I'm talking like when you're in the depth of things, okay? And the statement from the book is extravagance is the sign of a lover. Someone who has an intense devotion toward and delight in another. So when we're talking about extravagance, we're talking about going all out, okay? You know, think about the word. If you go somewhere, say you're on vacation, and you go to this resort or this restaurant, and you're describing to someone, you say, the accommodations were just so extravagant. You know, right away that makes them think that this was just something that was off the charts fabulous. You know, maybe the ambiance, you know, the decorations and you know, just the feel of the place. And then, you know, the food they bring out is like the best looking and tasting food you've ever had, just extravagant, just beyond your imagination. And we're saying that sort of approach, that sort of response is a sign of a lover, someone who really loves someone or something. They have an intense devotion toward and delight in another. And we see that in, like I said, in young relationships. Well, the question here is, what is the most extravagant gift you have ever offered to God? If you haven't ever given him an extravagant gift, as Mary of Bethany did, what would be an appropriate gift for you to give him if you were devoted to him as Mary was? What's the extravagant gift they're talking about before we go on?
Appointment,
Right?
oil.
Yeah, the ointment that she took and was applying to him. And what was the big deal about an ointment? Okay? I mean, some of you probably, at the end of every day, you get an ointment and you put it on your skin to keep it soft and supple, or maybe it's a pain-relieving ointment, you know, to help with arthritis as you get older.
They said that she could have sold it to feed like so many people in the.
Yeah, in that time, that ointment was very expensive, that particular ointment. It's said by a lot of commentators, I don't know how much proof there is of this, but it says that the box or container of ointment she had would have cost a year's wages. So think about that, okay? Think about how much you make a year at your job, and imagine the box of ointment that costs that much. That was pretty extravagant to use that ointment. And that's why they were so upset when she was doing that. That's overboard. Why would you do that? You could sell that ointment and use that money for so much better things. But it was a reflection of her love for the Lord. So when we talk about that, does anybody have any, before I read here, anybody have any responses to number 3? Yes, Peter.
Most extravagant gift that I offer half of my children. Committing myself to teach and train and raise them to love, serve, and honor him.
Very good. I'm going to make sure I didn't cut you off there. Yes, and I'm trying to think. I think there's. Where did I see? Oh, I guess it was my own comment. Okay? I'm like, somewhere I saw someone wrote something similar. And I'm just telling you personally, okay? Just like she's saying personally. I'm not preaching this to you, but I'm telling you the personal approach. Years ago, I feel my most extravagant gift to God was my total faith in him. And I don't want to come across like, okay, I'm somebody, and that I've never had a struggle with faith. Okay, we all do. But there were certain areas in my life that I said to God, you know, I want to be worried about this. And I want to know how this is all going to work out. But I believe, God, that I owe you my total devotion and my total faith. And I'm going to put these areas in your hands and trust them to you. One of them is, without getting bogged down, moving away to a foreign country. You may or may not know it of me, but part of my veterinary school training was in the Caribbean, in the island of St. Kitts. And, you know, we all see these pictures of the Caribbean islands and how, you know, like they'd be the ideal vacation spot. And a lot of those islands are that way. You know, they're made for tourists, and they have all these wonderful amenities. But this island that I'm talking about was really young at that. They're moving that way, really young at that time, didn't have a lot of amenities. I haven't been on the other islands, but I've heard that a lot of our American chain stores and stuff are on those islands, St. Thomas and St. Croix and all that you can go and you can find Burger King and KFC and McDonald's, and I think the one island has a Walmart, things like that. Well, the island that we went and lived on had none of that. Absolutely, and I think it was a good thing, but absolutely no regular types of stores that you would envision there. It was all little mom and pop shops run by local people. But when we went to St. Kitts, we went in complete total faith. Before we got there, we had no idea where we were going to live. Had no idea how we were going to get around as far as getting a car. All I knew is that I was supposed to go there and I was supposed to be there for school and that God would provide. And He did. And I don't have time to tell the stories now. I can tell you some other time. But I will just tell you that there were people who fought to get accepted into school and go to school there that were on our flight. And it happened many times after that. They literally got off the airplane and they looked around and they're like, where's the first flight back? It scared them. It was so primitive, I guess is the word I want. But that was an area that I turned over to faith to God. Another area, and again, I know not everyone views it this way, but I had heard several messages and where in Psalms 126, I think it is, it says that children are an heritage from the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is His reward. Okay, well, I listened to that, and I'm like, okay, what? If I take it literally, what does it mean? It means that when God gives a couple children, that is His reward to them. And then it goes on to say, as arrows are in the hand of a mighty man, so are children of the youth. Happy is the man that has his quiver, that container that holds the arrow, has his quiver full of them. And so my wife and I took the approach that when it came to our family, that we weren't going to use birth control. We were going to let God give us the children that He would give us and let God determine our family size. And again, I'm out of time. I don't have time to tell you the stories of the trouble she had with several of the children. And I almost lost her a couple times in birth. And it was not, okay, to go back to the talk earlier, it was not me saying, I'm the head of the home woman, you're going to have every child that I can impregnate you with, but no matter what you say, but we were in this together. Okay, we felt the same. And we felt that God would either protect her, or if He chose to take her in childbirth, that's something that could happen whether you have one child or whether you have 15 children. But this was an area that we said, if we're going to practice what we preach, and we're going to truly live what the Bible teaches, that God's saying that children are a reward. And we're going to say, God, who doesn't want a reward? Okay? I heard a quote one time that says that in America, we embrace we embrace debt and we avoid children. Okay, think about that for a minute. All right, that's so unbiblical and so backwards. But we embrace all the things, the boat, the house, the vacation house, the latest, newest car, etc. We'll go into debt, try and get as much of those rewards as possible. But when it comes to being willing to accept what God tells us is His reward, we avoid it. We take measures to stop it. And so that's what I had personally as total faith in those areas of God, is what I feel was my extravagant gift to Him. And then a little bit more in different areas of service that I don't have time to talk about this morning. So let's open that up for you guys next time in the very beginning. And since we're out of time here, and be prepared to move on to day 3, since we'll just have probably a brief discussion of that last question. And hopefully I won't be so raspy next week. Thanks for indulging me.